Good afternoon. I call to order the December 3rd, 2021 Student Achievement and District Instructional Performance Committee meeting. Members of the public who wish to speak may do so by clicking the chat button now. The chat feature will be open for your request for 5 minutes. Please submit your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information if you want a direct response to any questions you may have. We will begin with our first agenda item, curriculum and instruction, focus on science curriculum adoption.
Hi there, my name is Liz Wolfe. I am the Science Curriculum Manager for the district, and I'm so happy to introduce the Science Adoption Committee. We believe that we have narrowed down our curriculum option choices to 3 options that promote on-grade level, high-quality work.
Is it possible just to move the mic a little bit closer? Thank you so much.
Yep, absolutely. Running this everything.
Ms. Wolfe, could you possibly go to the stand?
Hi everyone, my name is Liz Wolfe. I am the Curriculum Manager for Science, PE, and Health. I am so excited and proud to present the Adoption Committee. We believe that the past several months, we have narrowed down our curriculum choices to 3 that promote on-grade level, high-quality work that is very engaging with lots of good quality hands-on science that builds from one grade level to the next.
The first thing that we did was to review the Ohio laws and policies, which basically says that we can adopt the curriculum that we want as long as it comes from the Ohio Department of Education approved list. The next thing that we did was to look at that list and see which companies offer curriculum for the International Science Standards, the National Science Standards, and the Ohio Science Learning Standards.
Next slide, please. We looked at all the approved ODE vendors. There were 9. Unfortunately, none of them had curricula for the International Science Standards. 3 of them had Ohio Science Standards, but all 9 of them had the National Science Standards, which is called Next Generation Science Standards, or NGSS. With ODE's permission, we were granted to move forward with the National Science Standards. Next slide, please.
On day 1, we explored the difference in the language of the standards between NGSS and Ohio Science Standards. We took a look at the current careers and jobs that were related to STEM, and then we took a deep dive into the student and teacher editions of every ODE approved vendor. Last, we put it to a vote for those that attended and offered the survey district-wide, which returned at a 90% approval rate for the NGSS standards.
As for the differences in the standards, we noticed that the NGSS standards were far more rigorous than the Ohio Science Standards. The NGSS standards presented what the students, how we would know what the students learned. The Ohio Science Standards presented the standards themselves, but the NGSS showed how are we going to know that the students know the information. So for example, the NGSS standard would say the student would analyze, interpret data from fossils. Or the second example, they would use evidence to construct an explanation for how variations among individuals differ. The third example would be the students would construct an argument with evidence. So those are how the 2 different standards would differ.
Next slide, please. Thank you. On the second day of our adoption kickoff event, we used a must-have rubric created by our curriculum council to narrow down the vendors that had the NGSS curriculum. We were looking for certain specific things, such as the curriculum being on grade level, having strong hands-on components, being accessible to students who are ESOL students and students with disabilities. We wanted to make sure that diversity was well represented in videos, text, pictures, and anything that the students would interact with. And we wanted to make sure that there was a real world connection with the material and what the students were learning, and what the students were actually doing. Based on these results, we piloted curriculum from companies that made the first cut in our in 75 of our buildings, 75 K to 12 classrooms. We chose to have a very long pilot period, which is basically the whole semester, because we wanted to make sure that the teachers could immerse themselves in the curriculum and really get to know the curriculum that they were choosing. Next slide, please.
We engaged our stakeholders in the adoption process. In September, we had vendors come and present the curriculum to teachers who were not piloting so they could experience it hands-on. Then in October, pilot teachers came to Curriculum Council to share out the pros and cons they were experiencing in their classroom. In November, we hosted a community event at the Museum Center. We had about 1,000 attendees. It gave our families an opportunity to engage with the different curriculums and then provide us feedback about their experience. We had more than 50 of CPS's schools represented at that community event.
We also surveyed our 9th and 10th graders across the district. We surveyed them in areas of physical science, life science, and earth and space science. And we plan on adopting curriculum in the areas of highest interest, such as chemistry, physics, biology, human anatomy and physiology, and astronomy. Next slide, please.
Based on the rubric results from the kickoff event, pilot teacher feedback, student choice data, and CPS community data, we are recommending that we take a closer look through the RFP processing of these curriculum. The middle school, Amplify, Inspire, and STEM Scopes. The middle school, Amplify, iQuest, and STEM Scopes. And for high school, Inspire, Pasco, and Savas. In addition, AP is considering Cengage, National Geo for a couple of the AP courses. Next slide, please.
The next steps that we are going to take is to take your feedback and do further research. You have been given a handout or access to a handout that is a limited source of review. It covers a comparison of the curricula that we have overviewed. Thank you.
Do committee members have comments or questions? Mr. Lindy?
Thanks, Member Bowers. Would you all mind saying just one more time, like what the recommended next step is?
Yeah, so our recommended next steps is we have signed up for weekly ed reports. They are releasing new reviews weekly. Probably about half of the ODE approved vendors for science are not rated on ed reports. So we are looking for more information. We would also like, once the RFP is posted as well and go through the RFP process, to take a really good look at the quality of the assessments and to see how their digital platforms align with our current CPS systems, as well as to review student data privacy policies and taking a further look at the differentiation in the curriculum, as well as the quality of the labs in the curriculum.
That's wonderful. Oh, sorry.
And then I would just add, they'll continue to pilot and hope to and plan to bring a recommendation of their final choices to you in February.
That's great. Thank you. That's very helpful. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for this. And so you're not asking us today to pass on this. You're just asking for feedback and then a passage in February. I appreciate you trying to get the international standards. I know we talked about that months ago when this all started. I still think it's not a bad idea for our curriculum folks to know what those international standards are, if indeed they exist in some way that is reasonable K-12. Not to, but I appreciate that the vendors didn't include it, but you said all 9 vendors that we were considering did have national
Yes, ma'am.
standards included, and the national standards were more rigorous than the ODE standards.
Yes, ma'am. And when we actually met with ODE, at the end of, we've met with them a few times. At the end of the conversation, they were actually very pleased that we were headed in this direction.
And I'm glad to hear that, because I think people want districts to show such initiative, and to only think ODE is there to constrain us, and usually that is all that they are doing. But in the matter of curriculum, I do think they've had some big movement really toward more rigor and more emphasis on, as you guys are saying here, like real life, real world connections. Could you talk a little bit more about that on the day 2 slide that used the must-have rubric, and how you came up with the must-have rubric? Just that would be helpful.
Absolutely. So we worked all of last year with our curriculum council to identify must-haves, and then we laid out the must-haves on a rubric and attached points to each of the categories. We had teachers from all over CPS and various assignments review the student and teacher edition materials from all of the approved vendors that align with NGSS. And then we piloted the companies that received the highest amount of points on that rubric that Curriculum Council created.
So it would be safe to say that the science teachers, instructors help lay out this rubric?
Yes, ma'am.
Across the district. I think that's great. Another issue, you did say the word that I'm shy from now, which is called assessment. But on this, is that one of the things you guys are continuing to look at over the next month or so before we get to the February, so you would be able to tell us, since a lot of people are carrying water on that one?
Yes,
right
absolutely.
Now. Okay, thanks. And a little bit, I see there's emphasis on cross-curricular. I'm just wondering a little bit more about, as you mentioned, STEM and the career piece. I'd be interested a little bit more definition on how shall we say, futuristic career pieces, whether it's robotics or what it might be. I mean, just a little bit more information on how this curriculum speaks to career efforts, because I know we continue to make big investments. And this is for K-12, whatever it was.
Including AP as well.
Yeah, great. And then my last question then is that it looks like you have a mix of things here rather than just one. Am I misreading that list? Or is it just one publisher that we're doing, or is there a combination?
No, we are interested in doing a culmination of different vendors. We have looked at curriculum that is offered K-12, and we found with overwhelmingly teacher favor that the quality of the lessons between elementary and middle within the same vendor varies greatly, and that's why that decision was made.
And that does lead us to this, the science curriculum for high school. Is we have to be very serious about all of it, but very serious about the high school piece, so that there is some degree of equity among all of our 15 high schools, that those kids are getting actually prepared for a career or extended work in either community college or four-year institutions. I worry sometimes that not all of our kids, we've emphasized in making sure they have exposure to music and art, but I do worry that they may not get the kind of exposure to higher level science courses. And I'm always worried that we're not teaching enough science or social studies because of the demands of the testing in math and language arts. So this is I look forward to your next report.
All right, Ms. Wolfe, congratulations on, and your team on a wonderful community event. It was well attended, and I'm happy to see community people come out and participate in that. And I also want to give kudos to you for the inclusiveness of the students and the teachers and that data that led to your decision on how to approach this. One of the things I hope to see as I'm transitioning off the board, but I will hope to see the AP coursework with Nat Geo. Our committee member Bolden spoke of equity, making sure that those AP courses are equitably distributed across all of our high schools, because I know that we are striving to improve that, and we have made some accomplishments in an area, but I will hope that would be something that we are keeping the forefront. If there are no other comments from our committee, I thank you. Thank you to the team. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you all for the support.
Right. Our next curriculum and instruction focus is world language adoption.
And as Rob brings them in, Ms. Sarah Morales, our world language manager, and Dr. Travis Yeager, our world languages chair, will be presenting virtually.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me well?
Throughout.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Better, much better.
You can? Okay, great. Well, I'm very pleased to talk to you this afternoon. As you heard, my name is Travis Yeager. I'm the chair of the World Languages Curriculum Council. I'm also a Latin teacher at Spencer. And I'm happy to talk to you about the progress that we are making and what we've learned as we've engaged in the curriculum adoption process this year. Next slide, please. As we started, we had 3 calls to action for our World Languages program. One was that students see themselves and other cultures in the curriculum, which means that the students' home and community language and culture is valued, as well as the target language and culture, and the students can see how the interactions, comparisons, and overlaps between those. Second, that all students would have access to grade level work. And for us in world languages, this means course level proficiency goals that follow the ODE proficiency targets for each course, depending on whether it's elementary or high school, how many hours per week the students receive instruction. And finally, that we would, especially for this year and last year, we would address any unfinished learning just in time, not just in case. So our focus is on communication in and through the target language to have the students communicating as best as possible, and for us as teachers to be looking to see if they are meeting appropriate targets that we have for them and that the students have for them, and giving them the proper supports and interventions they need if they are not meeting those goals. We want to make sure that all students have access to the rigor and opportunity provided by acquiring advanced intercultural awareness and proficiency in world languages through all of our schools as far as possible and all of our courses that are currently offered. Next slide, please. So our goal in our adoption was a curriculum that supports equity and accelerated learning in world languages. And we had these 4 questions in mind related to these 4 aspects of culture responsive teaching and learning, of aligned curriculum instruction, of targeted support and interventions, and progress monitoring as we go. We want to know, what do we as teachers want our students to do in the target language by the end of the lesson or unit? What do they want to do in the language, and supporting those teacher and student-led goals? What can they do in the language right now, which is an ongoing continuous process for teachers through progress monitoring? How do we scaffold communication moment by moment so that they can reach these goals? And how will students know if they're making progress and use feedback to plan their best next step? And how will teachers know if their students are making progress? Next slide, please. we looked at what we need from an adopted curriculum, especially looking at across the wide variety of grade levels that we teach, the wide variety of languages that we teach, and what we have started and substantially in place are the content. What are the intercultural themes and the language acquisition targets that are set for each course? We have curriculum maps and guides already designed and in use that are based on state and national standards. The assessments. How do I know what my students can do with the language? How do they know what they can do with the language? We have both formative and summative assessments that are approved or currently under review by Curriculum Council, and a good body of professional development materials that we have used and developed over time around assessment. And finally, instruction. What scaffolds and strategies will teachers use to allow students to do more with the language? And related to that, we have a very good outline of what evidence of success looks like, the teacher and the student side. And again, we have professional development around that. The main piece that we still need as part of our curriculum are the resources to provide equity across all of our languages, no matter which school, no matter which teacher, no matter which language our students are studying. And in looking at resources, we want to see what scaffolds and strategies will teachers use to allow students to do more with the language. So in world languages, we have a unique problem that we have over 25 curricula to obtain, vet, and pilot. That reflects all the languages that are offered in the district. That reflects the fact that we offer languages K all the way through high school, advanced level, even AP. That reflects over 50 different courses. We do have some must-haves that we, as a curriculum council, designed and approved, centered around content that are aligned to standards and student-centered themes, that our resources are communicative, first and foremost, that they're intercultural, and they're representative and relevant to our students, that our methods reflect instructional strategies and embedded scaffolds that are grounded in research and best practices in second language acquisition, and that our assessment tools reflect reasonable expectations for proficiency growth with systematic, regular monitoring. Next slide, please. So as we engaged in the process that we began last year and we continued over the summer and we've been implementing and applying throughout the fall, we've had several things that we realized. One was centered around the quantity and diversity of the resources and curriculum needs that we had. The scope of our adoption in world languages is much bigger, as I mentioned, than other content areas, which means many more resources that needed to be vetted and piloted and decided upon. The resource purchasing, because we had so many and such a diverse array of resources, the majority of our resources had to be purchased in order to be piloted. There was very little that was available for free for use. Due to processing and shipment delays, some teachers, some of our piloting teachers, many of our piloting teachers still do not have the resources they were supposed to pilot during semester one. This has caused a delay for us in actually using these resources in the classroom. And we find is that while we do need to vet resources, we're going to need to create our own adopted instructional strategies and assessment tools, because these are not always necessarily part of vendor created resources. It's been very difficult to find vendors who have a complete ready-made package that fits all of our must-haves and what best practices in language, what ODE recommends, and what our district has set as priorities. Next slide, please. So what we are proposing moving forward is to do a two-phase approach. One is to continue and finish developing a courses of study approach similar to the one adopted by the fine arts model. We find that at this point, that's something that is very doable for this year, centered around content The existing curriculum maps and guides will be updated and filled out. We'll create the remaining curriculum maps and guides that are not yet in place. Our assessment tools, we have cycle assessments developed and piloted, and we have semester assessment options that are already approved, and we will continue to review those and update those over the course of the spring semester. And instruction will continue to update and fill out our evidence of success framework, and we will develop a professional development calendar for the next school year. We will be planning professional development on this adopted course of study to be implemented the adopted courses of study will be distributed to our world language teachers in May, and we'll provide optional professional learning in June. And then as far as the resources go, we will continue to use our must-have rubric to continue to screen these. We'll also expand those to, our original plan was to look at the resources, the curricula resources that are available for the languages that would have covered 75% of all of our students. We will expand that to all of the world language offerings we do. We will make sure that our rubrics reflect those, especially languages like ASL, which we're happy to now be offering, and lesser taught languages. That we will make sure over the course of the year that we have that procurement of resources will be set and in place, that any permissions and approvals that need to happen will happen this spring, that resources will be screened for the must-haves in advance for any resources we have not yet done that for, and we will plan and prepare our pilot leads to begin to implement the course of study along with these resources. But next year, the 2022 and 23 school year, our professional development will center on the adopted course of study in August, and we will continue to offer ongoing embedded implementation support from instructional coaches. The largest piece for next year will be to pilot our resources. We'll provide training for our piloting teachers in all the resources that are going to be offered starting in August. We will do ongoing embedded implementation support from the lead pilots and the coaches and vendors. We will do regular huddles to share teacher and student feedback on the resources that we are piloting, focused on impacting student proficiency growth and alignment with our course of study. And finally, we will make sure that the resources are adopted for every language and level, not just the ones that impact the most students. We will be looking at stakeholder engagement. Our finalists will be recommended to the board next year in second semester, and the courses of study will be updated as needed to reflect the adopted resources.
Thank you, Mr. Yeager. Does the committee members have questions or comments?
I do, if I could, a couple of things. What's the difference between a course of study and curriculum?
The course of study reflects the content that teachers are doing. If you go back to slide, I believe it's slide number 4. So if we know, we have the content set, which are the intercultural themes, the essential questions, and our language acquisition targets. That's the content. I'm sorry, one more slide back, I believe. Oh, slide 3, I'm sorry. There we go. We will have assessments, good communicative and proficiency-based assessments in place, and we will have the instructional strategies and scaffolds in place. We just won't have the actual resources. Additionally, that might be thought of as a textbook, but for our case, that might include many other things, teacher guides, manipulatives, readers, and other things that still need to be adopted. Does that answer your question?
I'm sure I didn't word it properly. Are we using the term curriculum and course of study interchangeably?
So,
No.
Dr. Yeager, if I might, the course of study is like the scope and sequence of of whatever the course is, and the full curriculum is inclusive of the content assessment, instructional strategies, and resources. And so our world languages adoption is going a bit slower because we can't just adopt from a single vendor. We have to put resources together for that fourth component of the curriculum adoption.
Thank you. And then on the world language piece, and I know you've given us this chart before as to what languages are taught in what schools, at what grades. And it would seem to me that we probably need to, again, review that again, just from a feeder standpoint, and what are the options available in all 15 of our high schools, and where are the kids coming from, and when do we start that elementary work or that 7th and 8th grade work. I think it would be helpful for me, and I know you guys have already done this, I'm sure, that to see that stream of education, that scope, that sequence, and be able to actually say that it's relatively equitable. I mean, we know that the great diversity piece is there in language more than anything else. And that's so exciting. I mean, it would seem to me in some of our schools there ought to be pretty intense AP language efforts, because it might be that native language that the kids could be competing. So it would be great to really see the diversity being a strength, but also a better sense of scope and sequence, so that children aren't necessarily taking something in some grade and then not able to take it and to follow through. So I think that would help me as we look at this in the coming year or next year, or however that's going to pan out, if that's possible.
And I believe that that is part of the end proposal too, of the stream, and where we need to plug different languages in to be more equitable. They're working through that criterion too, as a part of their proposal.
Yeah, and sometime back, I do recall over the last 2 years, we've also talked about that that's also another way to build the AP program. Was that we found we could really build the AP program using the languages as a way to go. And so I'd like to keep seeing that happening. And we've always had public pressure to start these languages earlier in earlier grades. And I don't know how we fund all of that or staff all of that, but that is a pressure that even the suburbs are putting that pressure on us, where they're doing that at a much earlier age. So obviously in the new world we're living in, that would be helpful. And we benefit from having so many folks in so many different languages in our district. Which, by the way, is always a cool fact. How many languages are spoken at CPS? That's something, we got something over virtually every verb. It's pretty exciting. So I look forward to this, but I really hope this is a big equity piece and a great diversity piece, instead of that kind of, to your point, Doctor, that it's not that monolithic kind of thing that a language arts or a math curriculum would be. This is so much more out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yeager. And I just want to encourage your group and the team as you move forward with all of the various resources and purchasing and things like that, as you move forward into next year's plan, to be focused on effectiveness more so than efficiency. You know what I mean? So kind of be able to be agile, to do it good, because I know that we don't really have our timeline is really affected just across the world with everything going on in supply and demand and getting the things that we need in all aspects. So this is exciting, and I'm excited to see where we land with this. Thank you, Dr. Yeager.
Well, thank you, and we in World Languages, we appreciate your support very much.
All right, we are moving to Learning Technologies Update.
And I am happy to introduce Ms. Debbie Crawford. She's our interim Digital Learning Manager, to provide an update on learning technologies in our district. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. Rob, thank you so much. My name is Debbie Crawford. I am the interim digital learning manager for the district, and I'm going to be providing you with an update on our learning technology team today. The focus of our work, next slide, is really focused on two of our goals and strategies on student-centered decision-making and optimized capabilities. Next slide. I want to take a quick moment to introduce you to our team, as 3/4 of the members are new. I am serving, as I said, as the interim digital learning manager, and I am accompanied by the very talented team of Tiffany Gray, who is our new blended learning coordinator, Ashley Badgett, who is a returning blended learning coordinator, and Melissa Kincaid, who is our new training administrator. Next slide. So the learning technologies team is working diligently to make sure that all teachers have opportunities to explore, identify, and integrate technology-enhanced activities to support instructional strategies that engage students in standards-based, on-grade level activities that are culturally relevant, address multiple learning styles, and support the needs of diverse learners. So we are working very hard to align our work to the mission and calls to action in our curriculum and instruction department. Next slide. We have renewed a variety of learning technology tools for this year, including Schoology, Edgenuity, GradeCam, Cami, Learning.com, Pear Deck, Read and Write, which is provided through the Department of Student Services, Turnitin, and WeVideo. In addition, we've added 3 new tools this year, including Edpuzzle, Screencastify, and Seesaw. Next slide. We are looking at, as we identify tools to integrate in our district, not just how they can be used in the classroom for tech-enhanced activities, but how they can be utilized to accelerate learning. So we're exploring how each of these tools can increase engagement, provide scaffolds, and provide just-in-time learning. We're looking how to identify and implement solutions that fit individual needs to personalize learning for our students in the classroom. Next slide. Just to give you an idea of what some of our usage has looked like over the past year, you can see Cami, over 50% of our teachers have been actively utilizing that. WeVideo, we have a little over 1,000 teachers. Turnitin had around 12,000 submissions last year, and Pear Deck, we've had nearly 60,000 presentations in the past year. Next slide. Looking at our Schoology usage for this school year, we're sitting in the mid 90% rate, which is excellent. We have 2,400 active teachers. 35 of our schools have 100% teacher usage with their entire staff. And we've had right around 26,000 active students as of the data in October. We're still analyzing November since the month just ended. Next slide. We are working to make sure that our teachers' voice is heard. So we recently published a survey and distributed it to all of our teachers to get a better idea of how learning technology tools are being utilized in our classrooms. So we asked them questions about how frequently they're using a variety of our tools, what barriers they might have to implementing those tools in the classroom, and what they want to see moving forward. So what type of professional development opportunities do they want? When do they want them? How do they want them? What additional tools would they like? What are their favorite? Things of the sort. Next slide. Based on that initial feedback, we've had around 180 responses so far. Of those responses, the top used learning technology tools included Google Apps for Education, Schoology, and Clever. The least frequently used tools were Turnitin, Learning.com, and GradeCam. You'll see that there's 3 stars next to that chart. Those 3 stars indicate the 3 tools that are new this year. So we're going to see that usage continue to increase. Next slide. Now, on the previous chart where you saw large chunks of orange, so the teachers were asked, how frequently do you use? Do you use it every day, every week, every month, a couple times a year, or never? Okay, the ones that responded never were the chunks in orange. And so we then said, okay, if you're not utilizing this tool, why aren't you utilizing it? Is it because you don't know you have access to the tool? In which case, we need to do a better job on communicating and marketing what's available to our teachers. Do you know you have the tool, but you don't know how to utilize it? In that case, we need to make sure that we're providing additional training and opportunities that meet the needs of our staff. And then lastly, do you know you have the tool? Do you know how to use it, but you still don't find it helpful in your classroom? And in that case, that's where we need to start looking at evaluating the tool, its effectiveness, and whether or not it's something that we want to keep district-wide, whether we want to look at alternative licensing to maybe just provide it to teachers who are actively using the resource, or is it something that we want to look at abandoning or replacing with something else that our teachers might find more helpful. Next slide. In addition to that work, our team has been working on our Schoology course Tech Talk updates. There are over 28 folders in this course with resources for teachers. There are hundreds of files, links, videos that our team is in the process of checking and validating to make sure that they are up to date, and looking at what in addition we need to provide for our teachers so that they can effectively implement these tools in their classroom. And we are also in the process of working in collaboration with ITM for a one-stop shop for all teacher resources. So it will include all of the technology tools through ITM, PowerSchool, Land School, things of the sort, all of your learning technology tools that we support. And then we're looking at bringing in Department of Student Services so that we can have all of the resources for our assistive technology as well. Next slide. One of the new things that we've tried this year is Workshop Wednesday. So every Wednesday of the month, we've been hosting sessions, quick sessions, 15-minute sessions on the various tools that we have available in our district. So Edgenuity had promised to do one every week. So we have a cycle we run through, and then we look at offering additional sessions on our other tools as well, just trying to provide another opportunity or avenue for our teachers to receive training so that they don't have to wait until a professional development release day. Next slide. We've also worked on updating all of our digital citizenship lessons for this school year. So at the launch of the school year in August, we released 70 new digital citizenship lessons and updated our district's acceptable use policy. The majority of those lessons are available both in English and Spanish, and they include family activities as well that families can do at home with their students. Next slide. We also have our Blended Learning Academy that is continuing this year. We are in our 5th year. You'll see here we have a teacher testimonial as well. These teachers come together to work collaboratively. They have personalized learning opportunities, support, coaching, and they get to really work to design, implement, and refine some dynamic lessons in a variety of blended learning models. Next slide. We've also recently, just in the month of November, relaunched our virtual reality access for our teachers. So we have VR goggles sets that teachers can sign out and use within their classroom, and they will be delivered by our staff. In the first 2 weeks, we've had over 20 teachers sign up. We're booked up for the next couple of months. And most recently, we had a teacher just this past week in English utilizing the virtual reality headsets to have her students explore a video and then use that as a writing prompt to practice their writing skills. So it was very cool. Next slide. Looking to the future, some of our additional work that is on the horizon. We just started our Tech Pioneer program. It's going to launch in January, and it's providing individualized learning technology tool support for our teachers, helping them meet the everyday challenges of the classroom, identifying a development opportunity within their room, identifying their instructional needs, selecting a tool that would be appropriate for that need, plan, implement, reflect, and then do it again. We're also looking at our Tech Lift project, which is going through each of our adopted curriculums and identifying opportunities to utilize some of our learning technology tools with the adopted curriculum. So these tools are not to be in place of, but in addition to the resources that we are providing to them with their curriculum. Next slide. So that is a quick overview of our work to this point. We've been very excited. We've been doing a lot of new things. We're trying to include teacher voice in everything that we do, and we look forward to continuing the good work of our learning technology team.
Thank you. Committee members, comments, feedback, questions? Mr. Lynch, Bolton?
Go first. Thank you. Thanks so much for, how shall I say it, the surveys and watching the usage. It's been a big bugaboo of mine throughout all this technology effort that we've gone through with millions and millions and millions of dollars, that the usage has been less than stellar, but it appears that it's getting better. And that might be a generational thing regarding teachers as much as it is anything. I can speak from personal experience on that. Some of it's very daunting for somebody.
It can be, yeah.
A long time and says, hey, y'all are in a different place. So, but I do worry that our kids are exposed only to the degree that our staff is willing to be exposed. And I think that's an inequitable opportunities and challenges, because many of our kids, depending upon which teacher they have, might be much more exposed to being able to do this, and this might be more useful or whatever. So I just wonder, and I know sometimes we talk about this, but I really do think that, just like I think in principals' evaluations, how they deal with the community is part of their evaluation. I think how well teachers use technology should now become part of their evaluation process, even if it's and it's certifiable. You can demonstrate it, you can know it. It can be an expectation, because it's not serving our kids if we have teachers that aren't using it.
I am glad that you brought up the student voice. Melissa Kincaid and I have been in conversations over the last 2 weeks as we started reviewing the teacher data, and are working on developing a student survey as well. And so we're looking at how that would be designed. Obviously, it may look different at a primary or intermediate grade level than it does at a high school, and how we would distribute that to our students, with the thought being that if our teachers could see the student's voice and what it is that they like about the technology, which tools they like to use, that it may increase their willingness to implement it in the classroom.
Yeah, and I think that's very useful, because most teachers, they want to serve their kids to the best, and teachers are very busy and have ways of doing things that have proven successful. But I do think it would be great to be able to push this much more into greater usage. The other piece of your group, and I don't know if it's the right group to say this to, but one of the things we also have to do is have some way of helping our parents have greater access to the technology that their kids are using and that their teachers are using. And I don't know how that happens, but I know we got good grades with a lot of parents when we were helping people during the COVID period. But I just think it would be, I think there should be a parent academy virtually every night for people. It's one thing not to know how to do the math at the higher levels or whatever. It's one thing not to not have English be your primary language, but this technology, access-wise, I just think that it would help our families, help their kids, and it would show that we actually care about what they're doing and not doing.
Absolutely.
So be thinking about that as you look at the future. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Bowers. I think this is really very exciting, and I so appreciate your presentation. I'm both a board member and a parent, So I know Schoology, and I'm the blue. I know Schoology and Clever, because we use them, but truthfully, some of these others I haven't seen. But I know that it's a survey of teachers, but it just resonated with just what our experience has been. And I love the alignment, so that it's really an extension of curriculum instruction, and how do we get more on grade level content that is culture responsive in front of as many kids as possible. I just think that's very exciting. And I thought the data on usage and kind of the if-then analysis was really very helpful. So all of this I thought was great. I think to the extent that I had questions about anything, the goal you all state at the beginning was about increasing access to on-grade level work through innovative learning technologies, and that sounds very good and right. Do you have a measure that you're shooting for? Like, how do you know whether or not you've done that by the end of the year?
Right now, we are looking specifically at usage data right now to identify what our baseline is. Schoology usage is very high. CAMI usage is fairly high. A lot of the other tools that have been around for a while, I don't want to speak to our new adoptions, are lower than we like. And so we're working this year. We've created implementation plans to increase usage by at least 10% or to an acceptable rate that we deem for a return on investment. Once we identify the barriers to implementation, then we're looking at not just usage, but effective usage. So Melissa Kincaid is working to she is providing webinars and trainings, as is our educational technology coach, on how you can use specific tools to accelerate learning. So a lot of our teachers during the pandemic were very focused on survival. I was one of them at the time. And so when we came back into the classroom, a lot of teachers did not see the benefit of some of these learning technology tools because they were no longer having to teach in a remote or virtual setting. And so we're trying to help them better understand how you can still utilize these tools in a in-person classroom. And so we have not set a measurement for the effectiveness of how it's being used. Right now, we're looking strictly at usage, but that is coming.
That's great. And I don't have a prior on what it should be. I think there are lots of different things you all could choose to prioritize that I think could make a great deal of sense. I hadn't thought of it, but I love the distinction you made between usage and effective usage. And what given that we are back in person, what is the thing that we should aspire for when it comes to using technology in the classroom? It's a really interesting question. I think my suggestion would just be in future meetings, if we have a chance to talk about this again, can you all establish a target?
Yeah.
On whatever it is that you've decided really matters, which I think, again, could be any number of different things, because this all feels very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. And I was going to add something similar to that about how do you measure effectiveness or with increased usage. And the segue to how do you see an increase in teacher participation on the week work group?
The workshop
Wednesdays. Since you started.
Yeah, so we have seen an increase over time. It's still not where we'd like it to be. Be perfectly transparent, the very first one I did, I think I had one teacher come to it, and it was a great personalized, individualized session, one-on-one. I will say that, and this is why we included this in our survey as well. One of the questions was around, how do you prefer to receive your professional development? And is it asynchronous? Is it before school, after school, during your plan bill, at staff meetings, Saturday sessions? What is it that you prefer? And we asked that because we have teachers responding to us saying, I want to attend, but I can't be there, or I want to attend, but.
So there's always a but. And having just come from the classroom, I do understand that. But at the end of the day, we're exhausted. We don't have anything else left to give. So it's about meeting our teachers where they are. Overwhelmingly, there are a number of teachers who said that they wanted asynchronous options. So we're looking at providing as many opportunities for instructional guides, instructional videos, so that they can work at their own pace and identify what it is that they need when they need it as they get to that point. So that has been a big push for this year. We have seen a lot of positive feedback to the workshops, though, so we are going to continue them and just continue evaluating whether or not we want to continue those workshops based on participation or go back to what it is the teachers are asking for.
Huge issue as to maybe why it's not really increasing their usage if they're not getting the workshop support that they need, because of the same reason you just described, burnout. Right? So it's another thing on my plate, but I'm excited to see that you're being agile with changing and seeing and meeting the needs and kind of playing with different options for teachers, which I think that'd be great.
Awesome.
Any more comments or feedback?
A workshop, who runs the workshop?
So we have a variety of people who run those. So our team organizes in terms of what's going to be offered on what days. Some are vendor provided, some are led by members of the learning technology team. It varies depending on the tool and the level of expertise on our team.
There's, and I know we were doing this during COVID or thinking about it when we were talking about the digital academy and whatever, having, we have a lot of wonderful star teachers that have particular lessons that are almost legend as to how they do it at all grade levels. And it'd be great to somehow be able, even though that's their work product, it'd be great to be able to capture some of those lessons, particularly the ones that stress technology, and almost have those available to people to look at and see if people are willing to share, because it's peer-to-peer, or topic to topic.
That is something we were looking for our January PD session, is looking to see if we could pair some of our star teachers with our vendors on the January 10th afternoon part of the professional development day, because I think having that peer who's done it, been there, and has the example to go with it can be very impactful.
I just think we can really capture, because that's the real selling of technology, frankly, is how useful it can be for the teacher. And if another teacher's seen it as being so useful, and it's great. Thank you.
Crawford.
Thank you.
From last week, or last month?
Yeah, I would like to respectfully ask for the extension to send a memo on our arts inventory. It is currently in draft stages, and Dr. Rudnick has been on leave for most of this week, so we're hoping we could have an extension to send a memo.
Okay. But that's okay with the committee. We're good with that. And Dr. Brown, you had an update for us as well for the magnet schools and Vision 2020.
I have an update. The Vision 2020 schools, magnet schools, neighborhood schools will be sent.
Okay. All right. We look forward to seeing that. Evanston Academy enrollment numbers, or was it for us to find out why the enrollment was low? Was that the question, Committee Member Bolton? The inquiry as to why we were struggling with the increase in our enrollment there?
Yes, that we have a blue ribbon school, and yet we are under enrolled. And then we talked about the fact that if you just look at capacity versus the numbers, I could count 20 elementary schools that are under enrolled based on capacity. Why is that? And then I think our DSL spoke up and said, well, one of the issues is that people kind of redrew some lines in order to give more diversity to Hyde Park when we opened Hyde Park. So there's a lot of that kind of manipulation that probably needs to be reevaluated or whatever. So I think that's, if there's an update from anybody about that enrollment piece, and lack of capacity, but lack of enrollment, I don't know.
I just asked Ms. Hill Simmons to come and provide us with some historical perspective since she's been the principal there for such
Great.
a long time. And she's currently serving as the DSL for that particular school. And so if Ms. Hill Simmons can provide us with some perspective in terms of the attendance and some of the things that you did to enhance and increase attendance as well, and your partnerships with the community as well.
So largely, just giving a little bit of trend data, we didn't start struggling with enrollment. Two things happened. Maybe 10 years ago, we pulled out 7, 8 for most of our elementary schools, and we lost about 88 kids during that time. So then you go from being a 500 some school to going down to 450. And during that time, shortly after that, maybe 2 years, we had St. Ledger housing development. They were torn down and started over. So we were 2 years without those kids. But the big hit came when the lines were redrawn. Now, it was only 3 streets, but 3 streets with 40 kids, 46 kids, that's 2 teachers, and 1 parapro. So that put us in a space where consistently we were 324, 318. We hovered around there consistently for years. We didn't go under 300 until the pandemic. So with that said, what I did during that space was really work hard to recruit, tell our story, get out there in the community, feet on the street, in addition to the staff. So this was a personal effort in behalf of the Evanston community. Just really sharing with the community what we were giving to the community. The community is changing, and the kids that we service are changing, and their needs are changing. So we started to make the changes in school to reflect the community that we were caring for. So we would take every year, which was a labor of love and also fun, we take a staff meeting, and instead of having updates, get your tennis shoes on. We divide up all the streets, and we knock on every door and build rapport with the community and tell our story, because many of the families in the surrounding area, they don't send their kids to our district. And if they do, your choice is Hyde Park. You got to remember where Evanston is nestled right in an area where there are 2 charters. There's AWL on the same street, and there's Hyde Park. So some people don't see Blue Ribbon, they hear Hyde Park. And there's a razzle dazzle that comes with that. So we would have to get out and tell our story. We would make flyers. We would have our partners engaged. So if the normal school was having a basic welcome back to school, we would have a clap in. We would have all of our partners out. So there's a huge effort that goes into that. I think there are things that we kind of shot ourselves in the foot with as a district. You have to rally your support behind your Blue Ribbon schools, your schools who are different. They're doing some exciting things. We just didn't. We didn't tell our story. So it kind of, people just don't know. Now we put on the marquee, and I did not notice. I was just there today. If it was still up, when we got that A, we never changed the marquee. We kept it up for a couple years, trying to tell our story. Now the positive is we do draw families in, but it's tough because it's competitive out here in this market. Many families, people have choices. I would say as a district, we need to do a better job of helping those hidden gems, because it's not just Evanston. Eve just said it perfectly. We have 20 schools under enrolled, but we've got some really nice programs out here. The people just don't know. They don't know. Flyers, we knock on doors, we go to council, we would go to Xavier is a friend of the family for Evanston. So we spend a lot of time with our partners. We spend a lot of time building that family unity in the community, not just the school. But the school needs assistance. Brittany's a new principal, principal tutor. Well, these are things that just were in my toolkit. Things that I did as a regular, but it takes a lot of effort to keep that going. But when you redraw the line, even if you draw one street, you hurt enrollment desperately, because what we did, we took a school that was over enrolled and we gave them more kids at the expense of another school. This is a conversation that we would have constantly. You shot one school in the foot to save another school. Same district. It's a bad decision, and we've not been able to recover from that. So principal tutor will need the assistance of someone helping. I could draw families in because I taught your sister. I taught your sister's kids. So I was known. She's building her brand, and it's not fair for it to be expected for her to go out and do what I did. I mean, I would walk a kid because I knew the people. So during that time, why isn't Johnny in school? That's not our uniform. Bring him to see me tomorrow, that kind of thing. So she's learning that. But I think most importantly, we have to have a system in-house that we tell our story. We celebrate our victories, because parents want to hear those things. But when we don't tell our story, it's alluring the Hyde Park, the Fairview, but the small neighborhood schools, they get overlooked.
I think that's very, very helpful for me. I think also we have to ask ourselves, what are the charters giving our families that we are not? I mean, we have, in that competition, they were really on the move, and then that stabilized, and we were getting better market share. First, then COVID happened or what have you. But what is it that is appealing? And is it rigor? Is it lack of rigor? Is it better front office? Whatever. But I think the recruiting experts in this district are the preschool people. They're out and practically have a preschool bus that goes to every single event there is to go to. I mean, and that's just been a target. So maybe we need to be thinking about, just as you said, the boundary lines is an issue, but so too is this recruiting at the street level. And we've got to do that. Our high schools recruit, and we need to let them do even more of that. But the elementaries, I think it's hard.
It is challenging. I mean, one piece of good news is we attract so many external to CPS families that Evanston was in a position to say, no, we're not going to take this family from Mount Healthy because we're saving these seats for our internal customers. In terms of leveling the playing field based on what the charter, that's a really good point, because we were able to secure a list from communications of every one of our kids who were supposed to be in our attendance area and where those kids were. And we began tracking those kids down, calling those families, reaching out, asking those parents to come in, doing tours. It was amazing. So what we did do is look at many of the things that lure our families to the charters and emulating that. One thing, parents love the extended day. We worked with some of our Western Southern finances, and we extended the day. Parents love that. Those are valuable things. So I couldn't ask Team Evanston to make anything else fancy. Academics is the best staff in the game. Extracurriculum, solid partnerships, we did all of that. I think some of the marketing and stability has to come from us, the district, the parent company, because the school-based team, they've done everything. If you ask them to get out and recruit, they will recruit.
So let me just make sure that we're very clear that there are marketing efforts underway right now through Crystal Boyle's office at strategic communities and strategic neighborhoods that we know where charter schools are growing. And so there's been a lot of work with those neighborhoods and the building principal and teams of those neighborhoods to combat some of that so that we can reclaim some of our own students in our own communities as well. And so that work is currently underway, even during the pandemic. And it's not just at the preschool level with the work that Vera Brooks does, and she and her team does a tremendous job because they are at a lot of events, a lot of church events, non-church events, and so some of those efforts are underway.
And I would just like to add, as a parent, a resident, and a community member in CPS, and being on this committee, I've always said that we do not brag about ourselves enough across the district, from preschool to high school. As a person who's a public school a graduate from a suburban school, CPS has so much to offer that we do not share enough about. The diverse in our school curriculums and our focuses. We need to do better. We need to do better with that, and then waving our flag and bragging about ourselves, and I'm okay with that. But I agree, the marketing across our district, we just need to improve in that.
I do remember that postcard campaign that was happening district-wide. Right. Everyone said, whoever, this kid's going to get, and it was like addressed to the kid and the family. Yeah. You need to come to our school or whatever. I think that was great. I think part of our problem is we don't have a narrative. We have this sort of a fragmented way of telling our story. It's more reactive and sometimes proactive. I'm not criticizing completely, but hey, there's a neighborhood school and there's 52 neighborhoods in Cincinnati. We have neighborhood schools in 30 of those neighborhoods. So a walkable school. I mean, it's the big narrative story that we can't seem to get across. And we do depend on our schools to somehow sell their own story, which is great, but that's not helpful if they're out there on the streets alone. So.
One thing I would say in closing is when Evanston got the blue ribbon, we should have told that story on every news station, every radio station. We didn't. It was a missed opportunity. I mean, it was a missed opportunity because we didn't sell the successes of the people who make the work happen here in our district. And that's what you want to do because that galvanizes itself and people start coming in and they may not choose Evanston, but in looking at our portfolio, they may choose one of our other schools because now we got them in here.
I would just say two things. One is I don't think it's too late for us to tell that story. People may disagree with me, but I don't think it's too late. I'm certainly going to keep telling it, and we can do something more coordinated. And then second, I just want to echo what Ms. Bolden said about the power of the right story. And I have felt that that's something that's missing. I would add that I think the story is complicated. And I think that there's a part of it that is absolutely true about things that get missed that CPS does, that is about proving what's possible in public education, not just in Cincinnati, but for the entire country. And I think it's true that families are frustrated with some experiences that they've had. And this, if it's going to be the right story, it's going to be a story that helps people nod their heads to both parts of that. Because I think both parts of that are true and both parts of that are important.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Stacey Hill-Simmons, Dr. Brown. Other business. We had we were supposed to, Mr. Lindsay's going to give us an update of where he is with reaching out to Superintendent, Interim Superintendent Ahmad regarding a more quantitative measurement regarding her 90-day evaluation. I want to go ahead and present that.
Thanks, Ms. Bauer. That's great. I think there's been a lot of good and important movement since last time to where we are today. A couple things have happened. Per the assignment from the last committee meeting, I did put together a template and shared it with the interim superintendent for her feedback. She wrote back and said that she really liked the template and she took a swing at proposing a set of measurable outcomes. But I thought we've taken some really, really good big steps forward. I also went back and reviewed the contract itself just to make sure I was clear on what we said we'd do. I think we're at a stage now where there's a really good first draft that I have with me. I'm happy to share it with you too. I know I have some questions that I want to ask the interim as follow-up. I imagine you also may have some questions you want to ask. So I think we're significantly closer to having a good instrument than we were last time. But I think that some back and forth with Tiana, at least from my perspective, I would want that before I recommend something to the full board. And so what I wasn't sure about was what's the right venue to do that in? Is that part of the SAC? Is that part of an executive committee? Is that some third setup? Because it's not quite, I think, ready yet to present. But I think it's close.
Well, in my opinion, I think we have to look at it and then come up and give feedback on to what the tool is. Because I think that the board is waiting for us to present what we're ready to go with. So I'm executive session would be the full board, right? So that probably may not be the venue to have this conversation. Ms. Bolton?
I think it would be okay if Mr. Lindy and the chair maybe met with the interim superintendent for a conversation so that could be expedited, and just to talk through that, and then from that you two kind of help develop what the final product would be.
I think that's great.
You guys to do that.
Would you like to see what we have so far now? I can also share it with you after. I wanted to come prepared.
Sure, yeah.
So if we could do that. Mr. Lindy, do you think that we could have that conversation within the next couple of weeks?
I can move as quickly as you.
We probably need to move quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could do it
Yeah.
as soon as Tiana is available.
Okay.
I'm happy to meet. But basically what I sent was the page you have in front of you. But if you look at the table, everything was blank. Except for where it says actual result and status. I did put will be blank for now. But those first three columns where she's suggested priorities aligned to the strategic plan, a description, and then a measurable outcome, the content that's in there is all hers. So again, there's a lot in here that I really like, and there's some things I want to be able to dialogue with her about. And I love the idea of sitting down with her and coming up with a proposal.
So then we'll move to I'll wait to hear back from you regarding dates.
I'm taking to reach out to Tiana and find a time for this.
And I'll make my schedule available. Moving to the agenda item, hearing of the public. We have nobody on our hearing of the public.
I'd like to go back to other.
Yes, ma'am.
Knowing, as you mentioned earlier in the meeting, you are transitioning off of the board since this is your last SAC meeting.
No, you're going to beat me to it.
Well, we're doing this together.
Great. I was going to thank Member Bowers for her.
You can add. Okay, we want to. I personally and as a board member want to share my dismay at the voters' lack of judgment by not returning you. You've been a great board member and wonderful chair of this committee, which meets so importantly with the administration on the single most important thing that we do. So I've enjoyed it, and we'll miss your leadership. And now we do know you have an assignment as a result of your interest in athletics and extracurricular.
I did get an assignment. I accepted it from Mr. Harden, and I'm looking forward to what that looks like.
Well, the best to you and the best to your beautiful children and your absolutely fantasy husband. Love you.
I appreciate it. Love you too.
I don't know if we'll talk more about this, I imagine, at the last board meeting before the end of the year, but I wanted to say thank you for your leadership on this committee too. My first time on this committee, so I learned a lot. And I think some of the things I've really appreciated specifically about working with you, Pam, is not everybody on the board has a full-time job. You absolutely have a full-time job, and it's a really important, really stressful full-time job. in my experience working with you is you're one of the most accessible, thoughtful, kind people I've worked with on the board. And it has never, ever been hard to get time with you or talk about an idea or hear back from you on something. And that's made my time here so far an easier time. And so I wanted to say thank you.
With that, before I adjourn the meeting, I would like to thank my committee members. This year has been nothing less than eventful. Nevertheless, we have stayed the course, which is focused on student-centered decision making. And I appreciate your kind words. I appreciate your feedback. I want to thank the district and instructional leadership team. You guys are great. You work really hard, especially during the time of unprecedented time like this. And I encourage you to forge forward. I'm still excited about CPS. I'm still the cheerleader for CPS, and I'll continue to do that in the community as I continue to work with the families and students of CPS as I've always had for 25 years. So thank you guys. This has been nice, and I officially call this meeting adjourned.